Good afternoon. I'm Megan Racy with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Today I'm here with Secretary of the Department of the Interior, Sally Jewell, and we're going to be talking about the service's Urban Wildlife Refuge program. Thank you for joining us, Secretary.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Could you tell us about a time that you shared with an urban youth at a National Wildlife Refuge?
Well, fortunately, in the 17 months I've been in this job, I've had lots of examples. One that really comes to mind was in the Minnesota Valley National Wildlife Refuge, which is right adjacent to Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. And there was a group of young kids, I don't know, maybe between 5 and 7 years old, and their job was to collect native seeds, to harvest them in the fall, to be able to propagate the native plants. So I learned what milkweed seed looks like. I was chasing around after the elusive milkweed seed with, a little 5 or 6 year old, and we were pulling the seeds out of the pod together. And just to look at the excitement in the eyes of those kids as they learned, but also to satisfy my own curiosity, which has never gone away since I was a child. I think partly because of the time I spent in nature was just really rewarding.
Sure. Why is it important to the department and to you personally to connect urban residents, particularly youth, to the wonder of nature?
Kids are curious. We're all curious, but kids in particular just have no inhibitions. They will look right in at a spider or a critter. They'll see things that we as adults completely miss. And urban wildlife refuges provide that opportunity for young people that it's hard to get in cities. You're living in a multi-story apartment building. Your time is scheduled by an adult most of the time. You're being told what to do. You have very little time to really play, especially play out in nature. So one of the reasons we launched the Youth Initiative was to just try and encourage people to let kids play, to use places like our wildlife refuges, especially those that are in close proximity to urban areas, to open them up to kids, to satisfy that curiosity, to run around, to feel comfortable. We find that as we listen to the sounds of nature, like we're hearing now in this wildlife refuge, that those are sounds that are unfamiliar to many people that live in urban areas. When kids get out as youngsters and they hear these sounds and they recognize that this is part of nature and the ecosystem, they're going to be much more comfortable coming to a place like this when they're older. We're going to need kids from urban areas to care about wildlife refuges, not just those close to home, but those far away. If they've never been introduced to it, there's always going to be demands on the money in a local level and a state level and a federal level. These youngsters today will be our elected officials, they'll be our business leaders, they'll be our community activists, and if we want them to care, they have to know.
Thank you. What makes the service and the National Wildlife Refuge System particularly ideal to lead the way in this effort?
The great thing about the Fish and Wildlife Service is we have over 500 refuges, and they are all over the United States. They are in faraway places. They are right in urban areas. I visited the Great Swamp National Wildlife Refuge, a scant 25 miles away from Times Square in New York City, and a wilderness area as well. While we don't oftentimes give kids opportunities to get in the outdoors, the Fish and Wildlife Service can provide that opportunity. But we have to let people know that we exist. And I think a lot of people, myself included, for many years have driven by brown refuge signs and not stopped in. We need to make sure that urban wildlife refuges are on the radar. We need to reach out to school groups, to teachers, to parents, to make sure that they know that they're there. And the Fish and Wildlife Service is uniquely positioned to do that just because we have so many refuges, and a lot of them are really close to where the people are.
Do you have any more advice for National Wildlife Refuge managers on how they can instill a passion for nature among young people?
One of the challenges that the whole federal government has had, but certainly the National Wildlife Refuge system has been tight budgets. And I think it's sort of easy to retreat to mission and say, well, I've got to protect these resources, protect these species, and I don't have time to coordinate with volunteers, and I might not have time to teach a teacher. But when you coordinate with volunteers and you teach teachers, you're actually broadening the network of support that's going to build additional support for the refuge system in that particular refuge over time. So in this time of constrained resources, I'd say, let's not forget the importance of thinking long term. of thinking how we create an environment where people will care in the future. So just sometime, you don't have to organize it, just put it on the radar. Maybe you can leverage volunteers to go out into the local community to bring people out to the refuge. That awareness and visibility is so important, and of course, you know, it gets a double benefit because people will actually learn more when they come out here. They'll be better stewards of the environment, and they'll probably learn a little bit about their region that they never knew before.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks.